Hey, what's up, guys? James is his fiction and his nonfiction is sort of what you'd say on the dark side of things. Okay, but all the time I knew him, he never really was a horror guy. Okay? Even though he wrote stuff that was very gory and filled with mayhem, most of his, I guess, horror influence he said he got from Robert E. Howard. And upon reading Howard myself, essentially all his many of his stories are horror stories. It's just that you have a protagonist who can deal with it. Okay, who's usually not a modern person, who doesn't need to understand what's going on in terms of the big picture. He just needs to fight. Right? And James' specialty is what they call mayhem novels. So it's just sort of like dystopian science fiction novels of one man against all. But in terms of horror for this month, although for me every month is the horror month, these two are probably the most accessible in terms of their stories. These things could be made into films, in my opinion. Planet Buzzkill, right? An alien invasion, end of the world apocalypse story. Obviously, taking place in Baltimore, James' hometown. Hundreds of thousands of these little cybernetic spider-like probe things just start attacking everybody. The first chapter and the inspiration of this was actually from a nightmare that James had of like these spiders going into his mouth. Yeah, I know. Yeah, and it goes on. It's interesting. It shows like a ragtag group of people, mostly working class people. Right, the rich liberal people die right away. All the hood people turn on each other and get caught out there, and the cops get turned into creatures because these things absorb into you and can turn you into killing machines. So the protagonists here, you have one of them is like this autistic hillbilly kid who is a really good shot with an air gun, BB gun, and BBs can kill these things. You think of what kind of creatures are these? You could kill it with a BB. Well, there's like hundreds of thousands of them, and that's the problem. There's a scene in this which I always thought was really funny. It would be a great scene in the film if it was the end of the world, if there were, an invasion or some kind of zombie apocalypse. What place would you ransack? That's right, you would ransack the liquor store. So the scene of the people getting off the bus, which is their shelter and their vehicle, to start stealing liquor, along with everyone else, is hilarious. And the ending is open. It's kind of cool. It's open ended, but the weakness of these creatures is shown at the end, and it has something to do with the business I just mentioned being ransacked. Spoiler. That's right. To fight these creatures, who drink your blood in order to access your DNA. To destroy these creatures and be immune to them, you have to be drunk. What a great idea, man, for a movie, huh? And then the Jericho Bone. This was based on an actual historical event in Egypt where there was a long famine. With the Turks already were ruling the place around the 12th century. Between the Crusades and the Mongols coming in and whipping ass. There's a famine in Egypt, and of course, in history, when you've had long famines, what do you end up having? You end up having cannibalism. Now, it's funny, there are supernatural zombies in here, and there's a supernatural entity in here. It was actually really vile creature. But like much of the best horror, a lot of the most horrific acts done in this are done by people. And it's an interesting cast of characters. Obviously, most everyone is Muslims, but you see the divisions between the different ethnic Muslims. Of course, the Turks are the rulers, but you have Arabs, of course, who are sort of been put into a second place position. You have Berbers, Tuaregs, you have Nubians, Ethiopians. You have also some Christian slaves. You also have some Jews in here trying to survive this apocalypse of cannibalism that is occurring. There's some scenes in this that are so friggin' nasty. Let's see if I can get to one of them. I don't have the time. Yeah, and he has quotes from this book he read. It was an actual book about this 3 years of cannibalism. Right, here we go. One of the characters here, these children start coming after him, and he's a warrior. So these are ancient world people or medieval people. These are people that are not soft modern day softies. The children seemed not to be afraid, probably still being disoriented from the dust of their parents. He got to within arm's reach of them, shushed them one last time, and then pounced like a leopard, snagging a tawny head of greasy hair at each hand. Then he began to smell that sickly sweet scent with something of the leper colony about it. When he grabbed their heads, their little hands came away from their faces and clawed at his own hands. Oh, mighty God, I have been deceived by evil Jinn. The children had no eyes, or the sockets appeared to have been recently gouged. Ugh. He let go of their hair and stood straight up, meaning to run. To his horror, the little children clung to his hands, kicking in the air and crying for their father. He stepped around to walk across the open space, the mere 5 paces to the gap in the wall, and something grabbed his ankle, something strong and unyielding, cold as ice and sure as death. He looked down, children still hanging from his outstretched hands and screaming for their father, to see 2 fetidly fleshed hands, nails black as night, arms covered in rusty mail, grasping at his ankles, dragging him down towards the loosening earth, which was beginning to churn before and beneath him. The mailed Jinn hands and the clinging children prevented him from moving, from even drawing a weapon. Oh God, the merciful, the compassionate. No, not like this. I have sinned, but not so evilly as this. Before him, swaying like hideous flowers bearing gruesome fruit, a number of mailed arms reached skyward for the falling cloak of night, holding in their hands eyeballs. Eyeballs that did not dangle from the cadaverous fingers that held their cords like dirty flower petals of flesh, but rather swayed like hideous moonflower irises from some heretic's nightmare garden. Allah, save me! His words echoed dully from the ancient precinct of death and decay, even as the very ground began to churn to miserable life, seemingly given rise by the promise of a meal, the living, writhing, screaming repast that once was Yazid, Abu al-Kismet, most feared of the 7 red hands of the Caliph. Yeah. Oh, like I said, I guess they could make a movie of this. It would be kind of politically correct at this point. Yeah, right. That's what they would think. But in terms of some of these shorter works that he's done, this is not really a horror thing. This is him basically going over Moby Dick, and a lot of good stuff. He covers a lot of the Ambrose Bierce, Jeffers, pretty much collecting his postings on them. But very interesting. I still have not yet read Moby Dick. Also, yours truly makes his appearance, not in the book, but as the photographer. Right? There's many photographs I've taken over the years that he used, and this was one of them. Yeah. I guess I'll show you some of them are, yeah, some of these are mine. I have a photography side hobby, and these are really many years old, but it was really cool that he had used them. To me, it's a very, I would say, it's not an easy hobby, but it's something that I do enjoy. Between cinema, comics, music, it's all connected. Yeah, so I guess that's a little plug there, but I just want to round this out with these sort of collections. This was one of the first ones he ever did. There's a cool werewolf story in this that was funny because the protagonist, when he becomes a wolf and he wakes up like weeks later. He comes back to consciousness, and every time he's like, "Oh damn!" Like he keeps losing his job, and each job is like less paying, and he ends up like sleeping in his car at the end. But it is a cool werewolf story. But one of the greatest things he wrote, I'm actually going to do a reading of it to round this out. Dream Flower, 5 Dark Tales. The story at the end, I'm going to read it.